Right, it's time for my what am I growing and what am I sowing guide. What am I sowing? Yeah, for September. And yeah, if you watched my video from last month, my August guide, then yeah, the greenhouse has changed a lot since then. You know, it was looking a bit empty, I think, because I'd just cleared out all my early tomatoes, my early peppers, my early cucumbers and all of that, and just replaced them with new little plants. And now all those new little plants are huge. So these are the late cucumbers, these are the late tomatoes, and you know, they're looking really great. There's a lot of fruits on them now. Yeah, they're great. And these are the late cordon tomatoes. These are almost as tall as me now. And you know, also sort of better than last year. If you looked at my sowing guide for September last year, you would see that a lot of these tomatoes were ripe on these plants. And this year I've started everything just a little bit later because I want them to come ripe in October. I don't want them to come ripe now because I've got so many tomatoes at the moment. I'll just show you just like a few out there, for example. Last thing I want are more ripe tomatoes. So yeah, and also I don't think I had any aubergines at all. I think all the aubergines, you know, the plants were nice, but I didn't have any fruits. But now I've got loads of fruits, so that's really nice. I was kind of thinking I was kind of cursed with aubergines this year, since it's my first year growing them as well. It was making me feel a bit inadequate, but anyway, they are doing nicely. So that's kind of a quick overview of the greenhouse. To do a proper tour of the greenhouse a couple of days ago, so I won't sort of dwell on that. But what I will do is I just, as I always do, just talk about the sort of progress in August. And it's gone pretty well, really, so far. So first thing I did in August were all the early salad onions. They're all here now. I've also just planted some out on Debbie's allotment, and yeah, and the same with the salad rocket. I've just planted that out, and some of the Asian greens and things like that. So I've got a lot of stuff planted out. I've got a lot of salad onions close to needing planting out. My overwintered onions I'll leave for a little bit longer. I generally plant those out sort of October time. But certainly those salad onions down there ready to go out. Just planted out the early batch of turnips and radish as well on Debbie's allotment. And yeah, and I've got another batch there ready to go. I've got lots of lettuce ready to plant out now, and that'll probably end up going in the polytunnel because often September's pretty rainy. It's nice to be able to harvest some lettuce from the polytunnel. And I've got some really beautiful red rhubarb kale down there, which we're just about to plant out as well, and that's looking pretty good. The main batch of kale that I'm going to put under one of my low tunnels on the allotment, I won't plant that out until October because I want the ground to cool down a bit. If I planted it out now, it'd just get club root because most of my plots got club root. But if I plant it out in October when the ground's cooling, it's unlikely to get club root, and even if club root sort of starts, it'll kind of, you know, peter out as the ground gets colder, and they should do okay. So I'll be potting those on pretty soon. And yeah, the only other thing I think of note is lamb's lettuce, which is doing pretty well. Got 2 successions of lamb's lettuce there, another one just about to germinate in the house. And yeah, so a lot of people actually ask me, how do you get such good germination? And I guess the answer to that is twofold. The first thing is I don't always get really good germination. If I'm using old seeds, it can be a bit dodgy, just like everybody. You know, if you're using old seeds, I like to use up old seeds though. I don't like to throw them away if I can make use of them. But yeah, so you take a risk when you use old seeds that germination will be a bit dodgy. But the other thing is I germinate in the house pretty much most of the time, or outside, not in the greenhouse. I bring things in the greenhouse once they're germinated sometimes. Sometimes I'll leave them outside on my little grow bench. But I just find generally that germination is better in a cooler place where temperatures aren't wildly fluctuating. We've got a cool bedroom, which got a blackout blind all the way through the day. It generally sits at about 18 to 20 degrees, something like that. and that is ideal, pretty much ideal for germinating all this sort of stuff. In here though, temperature could be up at 38, 40 degrees, and then down to sort of 8, 10 degrees at night, something like that. Wild fluctuations through the day, and seeds don't like that really so much. So that's generally my approach to germinating. And I think, just the only other things to mention were the last succession of cucumbers, that's there. The ones in the conservatory are growing really nicely though. I might not need this batch, I might need it. It sort of depends what happens with the conservatory plants and how I'm feeling, but seeds are cheap, so it's always worth having a few spares just in case. The seeds for cucumbers, you probably pay that off in the first week of harvesting or something like that for the purchase price for the seeds. And I have done a few crazy things, like I've started some sugar snap peas which haven't quite germinated yet. They'll grow in this greenhouse, they'll have a little bit of supplementary light. I don't know whether I'll get any, but honestly we just have loved the sugar snap peas so much, I really don't want to be without them. And I have started one expensive F1 variety, what is it, Santonia, tomato, just one plant, and I'm going to see if I can propagate side shoots through winter and start that early in here, and then I got all of my later plants propagated off the one plant that I start in here in sort of April time. So I'll move it in here rather in April time. So we'll see how that goes. It might not work out very well, but it doesn't matter because I'm only risking one seed. And if it doesn't go very well, then I'll just start a plant in February and I'll propagate from that. I just thought I'd try it over winter, just something to try. I always like to try new things, and I will now just go on to September. So everything I'm looking at now, you can find a link to in the description down below. There's a lot going on. Lots of things to sow, lots of things to think about, and all the details you can find, as I say, linked in the description. But the progress of how all this unfolds, you can find out in my newsletter. It's free to subscribe. It's at steverichards.substack.com, and there's a link to that down below in the description. And that tells you week by week what I'm sowing, what I'm pricking out, what I'm potting on, what I'm planting, what I'm harvesting, all the problems I'm having, and loads more. So if you're interested, take a look at that. Right, so September. I did a preview of September last month rather, and I said I was going to try Eskimo carrots at the beginning of September, and I got some feedback from people saying yes, it works, you get small carrots, and but they do go to seed by the end of April. Well, in that case, there's no point trying them for me, because I've already got carrots in the ground that are going to give me lovely carrots in April and go to seed by the end of April. So basically I'm not sort of getting anything, not getting any benefit from them, because I've got plenty of carrots already. So I'll just stick with my usual plan, which is to start my early carrots in October, because if I do that, I know they don't go to seed until sort of well into June. And so that kind of bridges the gap for me between the ones I've already got in the ground now, which will see me through to April, and then I start harvesting these October sown ones in sort of mid-April, something like that. And I keep going with those until June, and by then the ones that I sowed back in March are ready. So that's a no-go for me now, the early carrot experiment. So thanks very much for that feedback in the comments. Last batch of salad onions, and I like to do a late batch of salad onions just in case I've got any problems with the earlier ones. I've got loads of salad onions here, but salad onions are a very important crop to us, and we don't like to take any risks with those. Next thing up, I also do a lot of beet leaves. Now, I find that beet leaves in winter are fabulous. I really love them. I actually grow them under grow lights for midwinter, but all the way up until pretty much the middle of December they do really well just under cover, either in the greenhouse or the polytunnel, low tunnel cold frame, something like that. And then from about the middle of February, they also do really well in the same environments. So just harvested as baby leaves, they're really lovely. They're nice and tender, they're very colourful, they're very healthy, and they sort of, you know, they suffer from less diseases and things like that than lettuces do, for example. So I'm doing a lot of those. I've got some already sown. That sowed back in August, which I'm going to put into containers. But this next batch here of rhubarb chard, boldor, Botello, and more varieties, bull's blood, white silver chard and all that, they're going to go planted direct into one of my cold frames. We'll see how they do. I tried that 2 years ago, but I planted them out in late September and there wasn't enough time. So planting them in early September, hopefully they'll be much better established by the time they get to winter, and they'll do well. So next up is salad rocket. That'll be my last sowing of salad rocket. And back in August I also did my wild rocket, which hasn't germinated yet, but that'll be for spring. This salad rocket will be for winter. And then there's a whole load of lettuces which are going to go in a couple of my low tunnels, which are currently full of peppers, but gradually I'll be harvesting those peppers, and by the time I get these lettuces ready to plant out, which will be towards the end of September, I'll have cleared a couple of low tunnels, and I'll be ready to go with these. And I'm doing Grenoble Red, Roxy, Brighton, Winter Crop, which is also called Winter Density, and Valdor. Those plants I'll be harvesting as whole heads in midwinter, and then clearing them by about the middle to the end of February for sure, because then I'll be planting into those same low tunnels some of my early brassicas, and I'll talk about the early brassicas in a minute. But it just, you know, you need a lot of lettuce basically to get through winter, and so it's nice to have all those lettuces kind of lined up, ready to go as heads, get those harvested through winter. Then by the time you're into sort of late February, growth has really picked up with all the remaining lettuces, and they can kind of keep up with our demand. But in the middle of winter, we just need so many that we need to sort of grow whole beds specifically for that purpose. Miner's lettuce is the next one. That is just the most incredible crop. Undercover, outside does okay, but undercover it's amazing. So that's Miner's lettuce, also called Claytonia. We put 2 little beds of that into the polytunnel, even actually under trestle table, so it's slightly shaded. It does absolutely fabulous. It just keeps on growing. You keep cutting it, keeps on growing again, keep cutting it, keeps on growing. Take 4 or 5 harvests off it all the way through winter. It's amazing, its ability to sort of regrow in winter with low light levels. So yeah, if I had to choose kind of one lettuce probably for the middle of winter, it would be Claytonia. It's incredible. So then I'm going to do a bit more spinach. Rubino is the one we like. It won't do very well in the middle of winter, so from that beginning of middle of December point to the middle of February point. Won't do very well in that period of time. There's not many spinaches that will. Giant Winter is the only one really that I've found that's good in that period of time. But Rubino's nice earlier on, and we'll get it cleared out and replanted by the time we get to midwinter. Just out there in that little bed behind the camera, I've got a bed of strawberries. I'm going to be digging those up and potting those up into hanging baskets, just like these hanging baskets of strawberries that I've got in here. And they'll be my early plants in the polytunnel and the greenhouse. And so we hope for an April harvest from those. And they are ever-bearing varieties, so we can kind of cut them back, or I tend to cut them back, move them outside in about sort of June time, and then they're ready and growing really nicely in sort of August time and giving us a nice crop again. And then I'm going to do red stem pak choi and tatsoi, 2 Asian greens that we really like in the salad mixes. but also if the leaves get big, then they work really nicely in stir fries. But I mainly grow them for the salad mixes. Just like almost everything, by the time you get into January, really, those Asian greens, the quality starts to decline a little bit and they start to go to seed. So it's useful to, again, to prepare something else to go in the ground, certainly by February. And there's loads of things you can plant in February. So just go back and look at one of my sowing guides for sort of January or December or something like that, and you'll see plenty of options. Yeah, so they're going to go under low tunnels, because I found that the Asian greens do pretty well under low tunnels, whereas the lettuces really do much better in the polytunnel than they do under low tunnels. So for this crop, I think I'm going to just try them in under a low tunnel, and then it just lets me dedicate the whole of the polytunnel pretty much to lettuces and claytonia. However, there's just like one wrinkle to that, which is that for really nice quality Asian green leaves in the middle of winter, I will be growing them on these grow benches down here, underneath these grow lights, which you can kind of hardly see because of the plants that are growing here. But by the time we get to November time, all of this will have gone down here. And so I'll be moving all these, not lettuces, but Asian greens and spinach and baby beetroot leaves and baby chard leaves and things like that underneath these grow lights, and they just give us that beautiful, really high quality leaf harvest in the middle of winter. Right, so now we come to the brassicas. And somebody asked me, it's like, why do you do your brassicas in September, Steve? Because I did my brassicas in March and I got them at the same time as you. Now, I don't think they did. I've asked them, like, okay, tell me, when did you exactly get your brassicas? Because I don't think you got them the same time as me. If you do them in September, you can get your cauliflowers, your calabrese, your Romanesco cauliflowers and things like that from a September sowing. You can be harvesting those in May, basically. And for me, that's the time when we're really short of veg. May, like late April, May, early June. That's the time we're most short. And so to have all these brassicas, as I say, cauliflowers and whatever, at that time really makes a massive difference. I don't have any problem getting cauliflowers in June and July and whatever, and cabbages in July and August, etc., etc. But yeah, I really like to have them then. So that's the reason that I do graffiti cauliflowers, Orkney cauliflowers and Romanesco cauliflowers in September, a couple of successions of those. Keep them in containers, in pots rather, in the greenhouse or the polytunnel all the way through winter. Then because all my beds in winter are all planted up, all my undercover beds. And then when I start to get space again, which is towards the end of February, that's when I start to put my cauliflowers out. So it allows me to use all those beds to get an autumn harvest and a winter harvest. And then in spring, when I don't need the space, I can put the cauliflowers and the calabrese and the Romanescos and into the low tunnels. And then because they're under cover, you can plant them out at any time. And because they're also under cover, they also get a nice accelerated growth, and that's why you harvest them in May. So that's my system. If you know another way from a September sowing and a February planting that you could get cauliflowers in May, let me know, because I'd really love to do it. And certainly if you know how to do it from a March sowing, again, let me know. So I also do red drumhead cabbages, also from a September sowing, same planting, plant them out in about February for a harvest in June. And I again like that timing because my spring cabbages are all finishing in June, and then I've got my red cabbages all ready to go in June. And then those few red cabbages, we don't do very many, we might do say 8. That's what we'll eat in June and July. And then by August, September time, we'll start harvesting some of our main crop red cabbages. So it's all about having a continuous supply of lots of veggies at the right time of year, and that's why I use different timings, and that's what works for me. So please give me some feedback if you know different ways of sort of achieving the similar sort of objective. I know obviously, yes, you can put cauliflowers, plant them much earlier in the year and leave them in the ground all the way over winter, but I haven't got any ground to put them in. All my ground that you could use for cauliflowers like that is all occupied all the way through late summer, August, sort of autumn, winter. So it's all full. So I don't have anywhere to put them. But I do have space for small pots with them in over winter in the polytunnel and the greenhouse. Right, did you follow all that? It's hard to take track of these sort of rambles sometimes. Right, so the next batch, so that's all happening in early sort of September. As I say, for the dates, just look down in the description below. Next batch of lettuces are the ones that are going in the polytunnel. And there's two categories of lettuce that are going in the polytunnel. Some of them won't reliably make it through winter, but they're really great in autumn. So those are Brighton, Valdor, and Flashy Lightning Butter Oak, and Riccia. And those varieties, as I say, they're not reliable through winter. Sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't. So I prefer to plant and have a part of the polytunnel that I put those lettuces in, and I try to get them all harvested by the time we get to February, late January, February time. Then I put Calabrese in there and Romanesco cauliflowers this year, or it'll be next year by the time we get to it. So I'm planning for those to be finished before we get out of winter. Then we've got Grenoble Red and Roxy, and those two lettuces generally do make it through winter and into spring, and so I'll leave those in, and there the lettuces will primarily be harvesting in spring, early spring. And then I've got new beds of lettuce that will come on as we get into spring proper, but I'll talk about those in later videos. And then right at the end of September, I think I've got the 26th of September, something like that, I'll have my second succession of the graffiti purple cauliflowers, the Orkney white cauliflowers, the Calabrese and the red cabbages. There's a few pointers to note there. One is that the graffiti is slower to grow than the Orkney. The purple one's slower than the white one. And I like that because it means I can do the same succession, plant them at the same time, but harvest them a couple of weeks apart, which is really nice. It gives me that nice succession. And the second point to note is that I do red drumhead, which does really well. That's the red cabbage. It does really well in June and early July, but it would get clubroot if I left it in the ground any longer. So for the cabbages that I'm going to eat in later July and early August, I'm using red Ladero, starting those in September, and that is a clubroot resistant variety. It doesn't grow quite as well and it's not quite as fast as red drumhead, but it's clubroot resistant, which matters a lot because obviously clubroot's really getting going by the time you get to summer, and so the cabbages are doing a lot of their growing in that period of time, and obviously I don't want them to succumb to clubroot. So then, in fact, all of my March sowings of red cabbages, they're all red Ladero because obviously they're going to grow all the way through summer, and they would definitely get clubroot otherwise. And then my final sowing, designed for a winter harvest, midwinter harvest, but not for any other time of year, is giant winter spinach. So it's not the best spinach, but it is the best just for that period of time. And again, like everything, I've got a plan, and that will come out in sort of February time, or actually interplant into it in February time, Calabrese and cauliflowers and things like that. And then it'll start growing nicely again in late February and early March, and it'll grow around the cabbages, around the cauliflowers and the calabrese, and certainly by the end of March I'll have cleared it all out and just left the calabrese and the cauliflowers to get finished. So that, I don't know, hopefully you followed all that, is what I'm sowing in September. And I am thinking, if I get around to it, I will have a written guide to all of this that goes into lots more detail and explains all the sort of subtle things that I can't really cover in a video like this, partly because I just can't remember it all. There's too much to remember without notes, and also just because it would make the video far too long. So anyway, this is the Outgrow channel. My name's Steve, and I'll see you soon.